It's pretty clear that Marvel Rivals is the biggest game in the world right now. I said it. I'm not gonna lie, I was hate watching the game because I didn't have a PS5 for a minute, but I got mine just last week and we played it and it's a banger. It's a very fun game. So I knew that I had to integrate it into the channel somehow. So I figured why not put the game up against its rival or just predecessor, being Overwatch. Both of these games are third-person competitive shooters with tons of heroes that make up each game's roster. So I figured, why not put these guys up against each other? So for those who didn't just follow what I said, today we're going to be putting every Overwatch character, all the major ones at least, up against all of the current Marvel heroes that we have in Rivals. You know, this video comes out the day that it drops, so if I'm not talking about people who are gonna be in the game when you see this, like maybe Ultron, Blade, they're not out yet. You know, I can't scale them. But we do have a lot of heroes that we can work with. And Overwatch has been a thing for the better part of a decade now, so, you know, that roster is pretty solidified. So if that sounds interesting to you, then I implore you guys to stick around. Because right now, I'm going to be shilling my channel. If you're here, subscribe, run over to 100,000 subscribers. I think at this pace, we can really hit it. We post tons of shorts, we stream, and we post videos like this once a week. So considering my subscription is free, you're going to get a lot of content out of me.
You shit.
Oh, he went 3-7? I went 0-4.
Yo, we got shot on. Yo.
And if you're old here, once again, thank you for the support. Whether you've been here since last week or my first video, it's appreciated nonetheless. Normally, this is the part where I would tell you like the video, but instead, I want to ask you guys, who's your main in Marvel Rivals? I'm a Penny main myself, the best Penny in the world as well. So, you know, if any of y'all want to see me on Marvel Rivals, we streaming it today. I think I can piece up anyone in the world. But with that being said, let's get on to the topic that you actually clicked the video to see. Overwatch as an IP came out first, so it's only fair that that's where we start with. One thing I have to establish when talking about this video is that I'm not going to go over each individual hero, because that's just way too many characters to go over. Rather, I'm just going to be talking about certain feats of AP and scaling from an attack potency perspective, because due to the nature of this game, all of the heroes scale to each other in one way, shape, or form. Like, they can all injure each other, endure each other's attacks, you know, they can react to each other. They're all relative, so they can all hurt each other with guns, physical blows, and they can all tank each other's whatever they got going on. So to individually scale them would be pretty pointless. But I will mention certain notable attacks or characters that may scale to a certain level, you know, but for the most part, this is going to be a pretty generalized scale for pretty much everything in the verse as a whole. As a baseline for pretty much everything, we have Widowmaker surviving a shockwave that would get her durability in the wall plus level ranges, which is pretty close to small building level. And to be honest, that's a level of AP that's pretty consistent in this IP, as we have tons of characters in this verse that are shown to be able to endure explosions of this magnitude. So whether it's shown in gameplay, comics, or even cinematic cutscenes, it's a notion that seems to be pretty consistent. We also have tons of characters that can create craters to this magnitude, by extension enduring the blowback of, you know, generating such force. But at best, all of these heroes really cap in the large building level ranges, as we have heroes like Doomfist who can punch concrete so hard it causes like all of this. We also have characters who have weapons so potent that they can vaporize steel doors, with such values also getting us in that same large building level range. But as for a pretty funny example of how this is the case, we have a hero known as, you know, Hammond. He's a hamster in a big metal like wrecking hamster ball thing, but he can basically ram into, you know, characters at such speeds that his hamster ball is on fire, by extension generating force at that large building level. And we have characters who are shown to be able to survive, you know, that energy point blank physically. And on top of that, all the heroes can injure and put Hammond out of commission, by extension damaging his hamster ball, which is so potent it can survive falls from space, which once again is another large building level durability showcase. And just like that, we've covered the consistent ends of attack potency for Overwatch. It's pretty good, and maybe you can even argue City Block for most of the mid or high tier heroes, because I mean, if Tracer can shrug off a large building level, you know, attacks, then who am I to say that the verse caps at large building level? You know, I think City Block is pretty reasonable for even mid tier heroes. But for the last higher end that doesn't really hinder on like super wank, we have a character known as Diva, which can, you know, blow up her mech. This is an attack that, you know, causes critical damage, but if you have enough health, you can survive it. This is notable because it blows up to a small town level yield using one of the cinematic cutscenes of this, you know, feat. So applying that yield to the version shown in gameplay and excusing its lack of, oomph for, just as like a gameplay mechanic, then every possible relevant hero could actually maybe have multi-city block to even small town level scaling at best. But we do have one more super duper wank high end to argue, and it comes to us from a little something called black holes. As in Overwatch, we have a character known as Sigma, and apparently he utilizes black holes in combat. And once again, these guys all scale to each other's attacks in one way, shape, or form. Apparently these things are not actually black holes, or pseudo black holes. But I'll ignore that, interpretation, just to wank Overwatch for a bit. These, constructs are very, very tiny, but considering the length of a black hole required to destroy the Earth, it's still a pretty decent feat that he's able to generate them. Once again, it's super hacksy, and these might not even be black holes to begin with. But anyways, assuming that, he just makes these black holes on some Space Godzilla time, man, this would be some planetary to even maybe star level AP for every Overwatch character. It's an outlier, it's not very consistent, but it's a high end, and so I might as well mention it. And while these constructs are more than likely, pseudo black holes, as a part of Sigma's official origin story, he was briefly exposed to an actual black hole for a moment, and he didn't die immediately. So I'll let you do whatever you want for Sigma's durability. Apparently all these guys can endure a black hole for at least a moment. So that's some planetary to star level skilling for Overwatch characters. Is it consistent? No. Is it outlier? Yes. But remember, we like to have fun here, so I'll give it to them. Moving on to speed now. Once again, all these guys are comparable in that department. And if we're going to talk about gameplay speed, they've all been calculated to be able to move at subsonic or transsonic speed ranges. There's a whole thread on the Versus Wiki about the subject, and it's pretty extensive. But that's a mere baseline for the Overwatch character speeds. As everyone scales to Gendo, a guy who can react to bullet fire or projectile fire, with many of these instances being calculated to be in the supersonic to hypersonic speed ranges, with a high-end, estimate coming from the fact that he can also react to Alari's captive sun, which is composed of solar energy, which is light pretty much. So FTL scaling does exist for Overwatch characters at a high end. So that about does it. As you can see, the Overwatch cast is a lot more, versatile in both their AP as well as speed than one would initially assume on paper. But with that being said, how would they compare to our Marvel heroes? Before we get into the Marvel Rivals portion of the video, I'd like to shout out two people, being Dread Dormammu as well as the Chat Champ, because these guys really helped me when it comes to Marvel Rivals scaling. The Chat Champ was able to look into lore and find a lot of the metas that I'm going to present to you, and Dread Dormammu was able to find a whole bunch of calcs in the verse. So shout out to both of these guys. Dread doesn't have a YouTube channel per se. I mean, he does, but it's not really active. But I'll shout it out anyways, and it should be in the link down below. But I know for the fact that Chad Champ be posting tons of power scaling type videos. He doesn't post too often, but when he does, it's always a treat. He always posts a lot of fun topics. I mean, come on now. Rocky versus Xenomorph? I couldn't even think of that. Who's not watching that video? And for all you Marvel Rivals buffs, he does a whole bunch of Marvel Comics inverse. So once again, thank you to both of these guys, and I recommend that you check them out. So with that being said, let's get into the Marvel Rivals scaling. Starting at low ends, just like Overwatch, using gameplay, all these guys can endure physical blows from one another and fight each other in an arena shooter. This is notable as Spider-Man and Thor are both capable of generating small building levels of energy in their punches, and we have Wanda's ultimate, or pure chaos as some of you guys know it, being able to casually destroy buildings to a large building yield. So off rip, heroes would get that as a baseline pretty much, as yeah, it does critical damage and it pretty much one-shots everyone. But we have characters like Doctor Strange who can replicate the same thing, and most heroes can survive his ult. So yeah, that's a pretty good baseline if anything. There's also the fact we might need to use the excuse that the calculated yield is simply a gameplay mechanic, as Iron Man himself is able to have large building levels of AP in his casual blast, which everyone can relatively survive. We even see Scarlet Witch is able to one-shot pillars that require multiple shots from Iron Man's repulsor rays to destroy. And on top of that, even Squirrel Girl of all characters is shown to have large building level bombs as a part of her base arsenal. But we have much higher metrics that we can talk about. And on top of that, we have Thor, a guy who pretty much everyone can box with. This is pretty important because in lore, he's able to endure crashing into the ground so violently that it causes the surrounding area to burn up with like a 1,000-foot radius, which would mean that he can endure, AP or energy, comparable to 284 tons of TNT, which is enough power to destroy multiple city blocks. While yes, Thor is stronger than most heroes, everyone can fight him, and this is once again a feat that he gets just from falling. Going back to some more, lore showcases, Luna Snow was able to defeat a powerful version of Monstros. For those of you guys who don't know who I'm talking about, those are the mini squid things we see in the game. But the guy that she beat was able to generate tsunamis up to a small city level yield, based on the fact that said tsunamis would likely fall anywhere between, magnitude 6 to 8, as the waves were, said to be potent enough to threaten an entire island. This city level area of power is pretty consistent, as in lore, the Hulk is just stated to be able to level entire cities with his power. And once again, everyone can box with him, though it probably won't end too well for you.
Oh, fuck. Bro, why are you so big? No.
Pop out to my streams, by the way. But anyways, we still have higher ends to dive into, because like we did for Overwatch, we're gonna have to be fair and talk about Marvel Rivals high-end scaling. As we know that eventually, as the main villain of Season 1, some characters are more than likely gonna be able to scale to the Prince of Darkness. This is very notable, as using the opening cinematic for Season 1, this guy is able to move the freaking moon in order to cause sort of a never-ending night cycle, which would yield large planetary ends of AP. And once again, I'm pretty sure by the end of the season, someone's gonna scale to him. But for a much safer high-end, Wolverine's Blood Barrage is able to split the moon in one hit, which would be equivalent to 290 petatons of TNT, or enough power to destroy multiple continents. We know for a fact that most heavies just scale to this attack, as they can survive entire, flurries of these, slashes. This level of power might also be supported by the fact that the Winter Soldier is stated to have earth-shattering power in his arm. Once again, this could be interpreted to be pretty hyperbolic, but if we have Wolverine slashing the moon and future ops which can move entire celestial bodies, then who's to say that it's not hyperbolic? Moving on to speed, and it's just as ridiculous, as using the previous two moon feats, we have results that would put these characters in the relativistic speed ranges, like relative to the speed of light, if you guys don't know what that means. And we also have characters like Captain America, who are able to intercept Tony's light-based attacks. And on top of all of that, we have multiple Guardians of the Galaxy as a part of this base roster of heroes. These guys make the entire galaxy their city to protect, so they're able to drive ships at these interstellar speeds, presumably. That last part is an assumption, to be fair, but with that being said, I still think all of these heroes should be capable of reacting and combating each other at relativistic to FTL speeds. So between both groups of heroes, who would win? Using consistent ends, Marvel Rivals guys get into those multi-city block to just straight up city level ranges much easier and consistently than our Overwatch guys. And using the high end stuff, the Marvel Rivals guys is also a lot more consistent and concrete. Even if you want to wank a guy like Sigma's pseudo black holes or solar system level for whatever reason, that's still not gonna matter when we have guys like Doctor Strange who can wield blades that can cut through dimensions, reality warpers like the Scarlet Witch who can threaten the entire universe as we know it, as well as see things such as space and matter as playthings that bend to her will, or just absolute units like the Hulk who are said to harness unlimited power. So even if we were honestly a little too generous to Overwatch black hole scaling, we have multiple heroes who could just deal with a guy like that. Honestly, I think the Hulk is just clapping that junk away. So as far as I see it, the Marvel Rivals guys take AP both using consistent and more out there metrics. Both would fall pretty comparable in terms of speed, falling anywhere between relativistic to FTL, but with the AP just being as big as it is, what does it matter? Same goes with the Overwatch guys' hacks, which is why unfortunately I didn't talk about all of their abilities, because seeing as how the Rivals people have Doctor Strange as well as Wanda on the same team, is there anything I can say that you guys can't assume? But even if you want to ignore just those two, we have guys like Moon Knight who has a literal god in Khonshu helping him out in combat as well as amping him physically, and the same thing for Black Panther in the form of Bast. We also have Omega level mutants in the form of Storm and Magneto, who can generate weather phenomenon and elements, as well as control the bonds of space and time. I can honestly just keep going, and you'd be surprised by what some of these heroes can do. But as is already, we find ourselves with an outcome similar to reality, that being Marvel Rivals slams Overwatch. And just like that, we're done with this week's video. What were you surprised by? I know I was. I knew Marvel Rivals probably would have won because it's Marvel, but I didn't think they'd be this strong already. The game came out like a month ago. Are there any Overwatch metas that I didn't talk about that can make this matchup more comparable? Be sure to let me know in the comments down below. And hey, if you enjoyed it, be sure to let me know down below as well, as it tells me the type of videos that you guys would be interested in seeing. Your boy is going to be streaming Marvel Rivals today at 5 o'clock or around 4, so if you want to talk to me about this video there, then that's the place to do it. But if that doesn't interest you, it's fine, because I'm going to be back next week with a new video. But until then, as always, stay big, G fans.